That bird's really pissing me off. Hey! Hold on, I'll be back. I gotta scare this thing off. Shut up! Hey Grauvlog fans, and welcome to another episode of the Grauvlog. I know it's been quite a while since I've done one of these. I've been busy making a lot of other types of videos and writing a lot lately, so I do apologize, but it's good to get back into doing this video series. I've definitely missed it. And I do apologize if my voice doesn't sound optimal today. I just gotten over being sick the last week, so my voice probably sounds a little bit off. So I'll try to speak a little more firmly and a little louder on this video so that I come across well. So today I wanted to talk about how to make unique characters. Character development is something that I think a lot of us writer types and creative type people really take an interest to. It's really easy to make a character that's really like flat and two-dimensional, that doesn't really have a personality. It's just kind of like a body that fills a space, and it's very difficult to make like a living, breathing character come to life. But before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to the Grauvlog website, to grauvlog.com/free. You can get a free preview of this book right here, The Sword and its Servant. This is part 1 of the Grauvlog series by signing up there on that page. I'll put the URL in the video itself and also in the description. And you'll get to see a lot of my characters in here, and later in this video we'll be talking about a new character that hasn't been released yet. But all these things that I talk about in these videos, you get to see those real things kind of come to life in my own work, because these are the techniques that I really do use. So moving on to how exactly I develop a new character, I kind of have 4 basic techniques that I use, 4 things that I do, 4 steps, if you will, when I want to come up with a new character for something that I'm writing. And I think they're pretty simple, something that I've developed over a long period of time. Since I started writing when I was in like middle school and high school, doing short stories, and always like racking my brain to try to come up with something different. Like I'd write a series of short stories and it's like, oh, I've already used that character archetype before, I don't want to keep making the same kind of stuff, I always want something original. And it was always just like such a struggle to do until I kind of just simplified my process, and I'm going to share that process with you. So the very first thing I do when coming up with a new character for something that I'm writing is just focus on one defining characteristic. It may sound like oversimplified, maybe like it wouldn't work, but I just focus on giving kind of like a shtick or a gimmick to each character. For example, in the first Grauvlog book, those of you that have read it would be familiar with the character Gestalt and his brother Ulf. Gestalt's one shtick was he's really kind of uppity and flamboyant. I just focused on making him just like really over the top, especially for a Loa character as he is. And then Ulf's like defining characteristic is his toughness. He's like exactly opposite of his brother. So those seem really, really simple and by themselves don't get much done, but that's just where I start. I just, like, no real person is like that. No one, I don't think, could be summed up in just one defining characteristic. But when trying to make a story and trying to make a unique character, I think that's the best place to start, is just like really oversimplified one defining characteristic that will then bind everything else that the character does and is. So after I've defined the one kind of all-encompassing characteristic for a character, the next thing that I do is kind of build out a presence, at least that's what I call it. And what I mean by presence is just kind of like, I try to visualize what they look like, how they dress, how they move, how they walk. Do they talk with their hands like I do? Do they lean on things? Do they look off a lot and kind of space out? Using their defining characteristic as a sort of guide, I then try to work with that to give it like a real form. So the defining characteristics, who they are like inside, and then their presence is kind of how they carry themselves in the real world, their whole being, as it were, in the story itself. After I've done those first 2 things, the third thing that I do is develop like at least one motive. Every character needs to have a motive, and it doesn't matter how minor the character is. If the character is a watchman or a guard that's standing watch over like a gate or something to a fortress, he has a motive, at least as far as his role in that scene goes, and his motive is to watch the gate. His motive is to make sure that no one gets through. And then, depending on how important he may become to the story, that character may have other motives like, getting paid, feeding his family, getting a better job, moving to a different part of the kingdom. All those things can come later, but a character needs at least one single motive, preferably one that ties into his defining characteristic, one that's really related to that, and then one which his presence is built to help accomplish. So again, using the former examples of Ulf and Gestalt, Gestalt's very showy and dressy and flamboyant, and his overarching motive is to just mooch off of his father and get as much money. That's why he comes to the Kultstein to visit his father every so often, is to just leech more and more money out of him so he can keep up his flamboyant lifestyle. And Ulf, on the other hand, he's the tough one, and his singular motive is to usurp his father and rule the realm the way that he thinks it should be, in accord with, kind of ancient principles that he believes that his father is kind of strayed away from. So Ulf wants to right the path towards a more ancient way of doing things, and that's his singular motive. Now, both those characters, being major characters in the story, have many side motives, and if you look very closely, I would say that they're very related to those very singular motives. But all of these things, again, go back to just like their shtick, their one gimmick that ends up being like the groundwork for everything else that they do, everything that they say. And the very last thing that I do, and I think this is really important, and this is honestly a lot of fun to me, is I purposefully make inconsistencies with the other three rules. So for example, with the Ulf character, he looks very much the part of a warrior, of a tough guy, of a scout, of a hunter. He has this overarching motive of rebellion and overthrowing those that are already in power so he can take control. But he has, things that you might not expect from someone with that sort of background. He has an appreciation for literature. He knows a lot about history and art and technology and some of the finer things. He's very studious compared to his other siblings and maybe some other members of his species. So that's not something that you at least would think at first a tough guy, badass warrior would have, but he has a kind of softer, more intellectual side that I really like to toy around with. So that's kind of like an example of my fourth principle, where I kind of throw a wrench into the works on purpose to make them more realistic, because again, like I said in the beginning, no one could be fully defined by just one characteristic. So I try to make them more realistic by breaking my other three rules with the fourth one. So I know that example I'm keeping purposely vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but this is just a quick example about how those four things help me constantly, though they always will, and until I devise a better system, I will always use those four things when building a character. Most of the character work, most of the work of developing a character will come as you're making the character, as you're writing a piece with that character in it. Just like with any part of writing, most of the work comes through constant trudging along and revision. But those are the four basic elements that I've always used, and like I said, will continue to use until they fail me. And I think so far they've worked out pretty well. If you've watched these Grauvlog videos before, you know that I'm kind of an illusionist when it comes to writing. I make things purposely look more complex and bigger than they actually are. Like, I haven't thought out that character's personality as much as you might think. I just give the illusion that there's more deeper inside that I've thought of. And I hope this doesn't disappoint anyone, but it's kind of an illusion. Like, it's a trick to make you think that it's more thought out than it actually is. And I think that's important for a lot of reasons, especially in character development, because one, no one has that much time. I don't have that much time to develop 50 new characters for a novel series or something, and map out every aspect of their personality. And secondly, it doesn't leave enough latitude for the readers to speculate about how that character's personality is on a deeper level. That to me is really important, to kind of give the illusion that something's more complete than it really is. And whatever the writer doesn't do, the readers can fill in all the rest of the gaps. So I hope that those 4 simple tips will come in use to some of you as you make up your own characters. And if you do use any of these, let me know how that goes. Tell me about your character in the comments section. I always love to hear from you guys. And if you have any tips on how to improve any of these processes, I'd definitely like to hear that. Like I said, I just used what I've come up with my own experience. It doesn't always work out for the best, but I do the best with what I can, and I definitely always want to learn from you guys. So let me know in the comments section what you do to make up a new character, what are the considerations that you put into mind, and if you don't write and you like to focus on reading sci-fi and fantasy, what are the aspects of a character that most attract you to that character? So what sort of things do you want to read about a character that really kind of pull you into that personality? I'd like to remind everyone once again to visit the Grauvlog website and sign up for a free ebook preview of this book right here, The Sword and its Servant by me. This is Grauvlog Part 1. I'll put the URL in the video description and also in the video itself. I'd invite everyone watching to go and sign up for that free preview. Don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Grauvlog channel. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.